Ubisoft, there's a really clear-cut answer to how to save your gaming division, and it is by making this game that I have come up with featuring one of the best characters of all time, Sam Fisher from Splinter
Oh,
Cell. There needs to be a Splinter Cell Battle Royale.
I
Here
knew it.
is where it gets interesting. Instead of there being like survive the circle, it would be 99 agents that drop in along with
hunting
one
everyone.
Sam Fisher. But this one person's idea is that they are trying to be the untrackable person going around this island or this place that they drop in, and the other 99 agents are trying to hunt down and kill Sam Fisher. And whoever kills him, that's who is the winner of the Battle Royale. I am like so confused on Anthony's face because I've either come up with the perfect idea or he thinks I'm the stupidest person in the world.
Are you gonna box product, market it, or are you gonna live service it?
Oh, that's a live service.
Okay.
It's
What's
free
your
to
content
play.
plan?
It's free to play with cool
What's your roadmap?
expansions.
Yeah,
And
content plan.
of course, microtransactions.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you got to have cool skins for all the seekers, and you got to have like you got to have an Assassin's Creed costume for Sam. And if you want to get really nuts, like imagine like rabid Sam comes at you and just all of a sudden like like
Just rabbits.
just the real slow like the silence pistol. Pew, pew, pew.
I want to know how many things David hears randomly and thinks Battle Royale.
Welcome to the Gaming Trend Podcast, the official podcast of GamingTrend.com. My name is Anthony Shelton, and I am joined by David Burdett
Hello there.
and Noah Rigsby.
Hey, hi, how are you?
In this podcast, we talk about the biggest games of the week, games in our backlog we should have played a long time ago, and what you need to play. But we still don't have a ton of games to talk about yet because it's very early in the year. But we do have a lot of news stories to discuss. So we'll do that. We'll also talk about 3 indie games we're looking forward to in 2023. You don't want to forget about the indies. Those matter too. So there's some pretty beefy news stories to discuss. So we're going to start with that. David, would you like to lead us in that?
Certainly. Let me go ahead and get over here to our news stories real fast.
Yeah.
The first one is one that's a little bit old just because we were going to get to it last week, but man, we got carried away talking about some fun stuff. Naughty Dog's next game is going to be structured more like a TV show, is the way that Neil Druckmann has talked about it. That there's been a lot of discussion regarding the curse of video game adaptions, and hopefully, this new Last of Us series is going to put that to bed because we've still got some really good adaptions. The Sonic movies have been good and whatnot, but Druckmann, he's saying the next project that they're working on, they're looking to structure it more like a TV show than anything that they have made before, and that he has already been assembling an entire writer's room for the project. So I guess the real question is who is this for? And what's the point of it? But at the same point, The Last of Us itself is kind of TV show, the first game. Like it's not necessarily, I'm not saying it is a TV show, but like structured like a TV show. If there's anything that's already kind of has a little bit of that structure, it's PlayStation first party. So what do y'all think?
Well, I don't think it's The Last of Us. It's an unannounced game. So
Oh yeah,
we
I
don't have
agree
to
with
worry
that.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the point? That's my question. Like we did this with Telltale games. Those were episodic. At first, it was, oh, this is interesting. The idea of you play a level, there's a cliffhanger, and you want to play a little bit more. You'll get it the next week or whenever it's finished. And it was cool. And then we would get the whole season put together. Those would be sold together. And then once Telltale went away, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. Why did we do that? What was the
Yeah.
point of all that? We could just either play the whole package together and enjoy it, binge it, basically, or we could just, do what we've been doing with video games and just make the whole thing and we just play the whole thing. So when Neil Druckmann talks about we're going to set this up with a TV structure, the only thing I can think of is episodic. And I don't see the point in doing that. It's not going to push games forward. It's not going to push the industry forward. It's not going to bring in players who don't play games that often. It's not going to attract them to play it. So what's the point? The only thing I can think of is perhaps they they are trying to get a different audience who probably doesn't play games as much, and they plan on putting it on a Netflix or an Amazon, since both of those companies have demonstrated and have shown and do have interest in video games. So we know Netflix is putting video games on their platform. Amazon has obviously shown interest. They publish now. So maybe they want to go with a similar route with Netflix. And so something familiar is TV. That's what other people who don't play games recognize. Here's something you could play maybe in 30 minutes and be done with it for the night. You could wait for the next one if you're interested. That's about the only thing I can think of. Other than that, I just feel like this is what Sony does. This is their bag. This is what they're comfortable with. They do movies, they do TVs, and they're good at selling TVs, TV shows is what I mean, and they're good at selling TVs as well. So this all fits right into that part of Sony. So it makes sense to go with the person or the team that has done probably the most cinematic ish video games, and Naughty Dog. I don't know if Neil Druckmann approached Sony with this or Sony approached Naughty Dog with this and was like, hey, can you do this? Either way, I don't think it's going to work. I don't know what the point is.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I am a big proponent of if it isn't broke, don't fix it. They have a good formula with their titles. I don't know. It'd have to be a new IP. There's nothing pre-existing, in their universe of games that would work. It'd have to be something new. I don't know pacing wise how you would do it if you didn't do it episodically. You know, are you gonna have? If you don't, are you just gonna have your first game set up to be like season one, where you just set up the world and the characters, and you don't really get into the heart of the story yet? Um, is it a mobile game? Is that how they're gonna, tie it into these other streaming services where it's almost like interactive? Um, I don't know. I need context, and I would like to
Yeah.
know more information. It's kind of, it's hard to figure out. I feel like we only see half of their idea, and without knowing the other half about their implementation, I it's just, it could be one of those things where they tell us, the final piece of the puzzle, and then oh, it clicks, and you're like, hey, that can work. But until we get more info, it's I don't like it. I like what they're doing with their titles already. I think they're well paced and well marketed uh, to non-hardcore gamers, but also casuals. Um, so especially with them, branching out their branding, with the Last of Us TV show and stuff like that, I just need more info. I need more
Well,
context.
here's the thing. You don't even have half of an idea here. You have maybe a crumb off the piece of bread that is the idea. That's one sentence. So we really have no idea. I agree. It doesn't need to be episodic if it is the kind of game that we think it is, like a Telltale game. Now, I've got a couple of thoughts on it. One of them actually kind of popped up as you were talking about some of it. But the first thought is structured as a TV show could just mean the story is that way. So, for instance, the best way that I can kind of relate that is Alan Wake. When you play Alan Wake, it actually introduces each chapter as last week on Alan Wake or last time on Alan Wake, and it's literally almost like you're experiencing this as a almost a show. what you're actually going through with each of the chapters. The other way, obviously, they could structure this live TV is another Remedy thing, Quantum Break. Does anybody remember Quantum Break? Where you would
Yep,
play
been
the
waiting
game,
for
you
it.
would make decisions, and then it would play a TV episode that was literally part of like whatever the decision, like it would alter something slightly. So I wouldn't put it past Neil Druckmann to do something like that, just because I get the feeling he would love to take some of these big name actors and put them in his game, especially after a certain studio over in Santa Monica had did really well with having some pretty big names in their projects. It could just be the way that they're shooting it with the one shot idea, because that is a little similar, very similar to a TV show to a degree, where it's just following that character the whole time. So that's one side of it. The other side is Sony keeps talking about live service games. You could always structure a game as a live service game that way. Like we've not been thinking about it in those terms of maybe there is like a single player narrative behind something. Like for instance, almost like a Destiny, so to speak, where you're playing through this. There's other things you can do in the world, but you're still waiting for that next episode, and
Same
maybe they
thing,
would be
man.
playing. It's the same idea, but it's not telltale, so to speak, in
Yeah,
the sense of where you're, oh, I played it, now I'm waiting for the next thing. It's okay, well, I've got to go and just, I can go and do other things while I wait for the next episode of content, but maybe speed up the content somehow, as opposed to with Destiny, you're only getting big chunks every year, whereas this would be kind of a quicker kind of thing. But I would imagine live service may have something to do with this, and it could even be with factions. I'm not saying that I would assume this it isn't, but I've heard some very ambitious things about factions. Is that they are trying to find a way to incorporate a narrative into this multiplayer game. So even if it's not factions 2, maybe they're looking at what they've been doing in factions 2 and it's like, this is going to change the medium of multiplayer, where it's a lot more narrative based, and maybe they're looking at that saying, hey, this is a good blueprint to how we move forward with our next project, which is a live service project. So
yeah.
just an idea on that.
I mean, you bring up a good point. Like Destiny has kind of converted. They've almost perfected the you know episodically occurring events in their battle pass. Granted, it's kind of gotten stale, with the content cycle of it, but they've done really well where each week, you know, you get a little bit of dialogue. You might get like a small cutscene, but that at least progresses the story a little bit. Granted, it does feel heavily time gated because it kind of is, which may or may not be good depending on the player. But yeah, you've got a good idea where, you know, your battle pass could be like season 1 and then season 2, but each week, there's a little bit of story that gets progressed each week. And so if they structure it like that and they write it well, which that's Naughty Dog, uh, they could make it work.
I could just see them trying to get ambitious with that as their whole TV structure kind of idea.
But what's the point? Why do that? That's the whole thing. Why do that? Bungie has a reasoning that because they are actually gating stuff. Or each week it acts as prep time for them for extra content later, and so they don't give it all at one time because they are working on and making sure everything else is good for the next week. So there's actual logistics behind the way they have structured their seasons. For Naughty Dog to be like, hey, we're going to do that. For what? Like, you guys aren't Destiny. You don't have a Destiny-like game. There's no point. So why?
But if that's what they're building,
anything? For what?
If that's what you're building, if you're building a live service game, that's why you're trying to do it.
The live service part, why are you gating anything? Why?
Engagement.
What's the point?
Get people to come back next week.
They're already there if they're playing. Keep them. Like,
Yeah, but you want to keep drawing people back in if you've got like some sort of mystery that you're building or whatnot. You ensure that they're coming back each week.
so what are you doing in the meantime?
Well, you still got to find a way to engage them anyway, but like Noah said, it can get stale if you don't have anything new to do every week or
Right.
every
It,
month or
I think it
whatnot.
depends on the game that they're gonna do.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah,
Right, but
because
this
if
they're doing a multiplayer game. This is the first multiplayer they're doing in a very long time. Naughty Dog has solidified themselves as we're a cinematic video game studio. That's what they are. They're doing this multiplayer thing because number one, The Last of Us multiplayer was actually very good.
The
So
really
I'm
Uncharted
good,
glad
ones
they
were
are
I
too.
doing
loved it.
something.
The
Yeah,
Uncharted ones were really good as well. So
The Last of Us was unique though. That was very good. So I'm glad they are doing something multiplayer wise with The Last of Us. However, still,
yeah.
that's not their identity. That's not what Naughty Dog does. And so to
It's not what
waste
we
even
consider the
more,
identity now.
uh, to put more resources out with a multiplayer game that's essentially going to be a live service, and then to have another live service on top of that, and then they're still going to try to make these cinematic experiences because that's the stuff that's making them the bank.
No.
We know that. That's what people want. That's a lot of resources dedicated to that. I'm not saying Naughty Dog is a small studio. I just don't see them having that much resources to be able to continually do something like that with a live service. It totally makes sense for them to go more for something that is Telltale ish, which is why I just wonder what would be
Yeah.
the point.
Well, this is in complete whatever this is we would guess it's probably pre-production stage if you're assembling a team of writers for it. So the idea would be that it's either coming later or they're going to be staffing up heavily for this. So
Sure.
that's really where that goes. But I mean, Gorilla, we never thought they'd make a great open world game, a great open world action game. They were only pretty FPS shooters. So, the Naughty Dog, I wouldn't put it past them to make a ridiculous live service game that reinvents how we look at live service, if even with something episodic. But I definitely get your points of like why change what isn't working? Why walk away from stuff that you're doing really well? But my guess is we're getting factions too. They're working on whatever Last of Us 3 is, and then this new IP is probably what's on their minds right now.
yeah. As long as it doesn't, deter from, Wolverine, Spider, all
Well, that's
the
Insomniac, so
existing.
that's fine.
I just mean like the storyline wise, like the
Yeah.
main storyline games that they've established in their universes and stuff. As long as that doesn't get compromised for them doing something new, I mean, let's see what they can do.
I
They
think the
start
good thing
building
is a lot
two,
of
there
these.
will be a compromise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the good thing is a lot of these studios are starting to expand into multiple teams. We're not seeing Sony teams. We're not seeing like brand new studios. We're seeing multiple teams inside of studios. So if they can continue to hire and expand, then that's fine. You
Yeah.
learn how to add experiences rather than subtract from what's working. And of course the good thing is with people from Bungie on board, you they're a big studio. You can take from their knowledge and borrow some people and stuff to help you with these experiences.
All right. What's next?
Next is Redfall, and it recently came out from the game director. I don't know if it's the creative director or whatnot, but said that Redfall is not Left for Dead, which I think a lot of us were thinking Redfall was like, oh, this is just another co-op, run in, shoot the things, get out alive kind of thing. No, this is actually going to play more like Far Cry than it does Left for Dead or Back for Blood, which is, I'll be completely honest, for me, I was immediately more interested in this game that way because we just got done talking about Naughty Dog and their proclivities to storylines and making these cinematic things. Arcane is phenomenal at building worlds, at building these things you want to live in, and they have some brilliant narratives out there. The Dishonored games are fantastic. Deathloop had a really cool narrative behind it. They've just Arcane knows what they're doing in those spaces. So it's best to get something out of them that is going to push us more to narrative, to things like that, while also allowing them to dip themselves into this online hub of having four-player co-op, getting more into some of the online kind of things. I'm interested to see if there is going to be a little bit more live service to this one since it is focused on co-op. But yeah, Far Cry, like I'm actually a lot more interested in this because of being able to run around and chase stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, I this might be a hot take, or I might just be an idiot. I never once got the inclination that it was going to be like Left 4 Dead through the
Really?
entire videos. Yeah, because I went back through and when this story dropped, I went through and like I watched the different trailers to be like maybe I just missed something, and like the official trailer for the game, like 2 seconds in big bold red letters. Let me see exactly. I've got it. The exact statement it says, "Welcome to Redfall, an open world story driven shooter." And I was like, I don't know how somebody could see that and instantly go, Left 4 Dead.
I guess we just all keyed in on four-player co-op, and it's against
I don't remember
vampires.
seeing
So
that.
Like I and which like I said, I've been in around video games, so I'm guessing from like a more casual person, they might put the two and two, or might see the similarities, but they could have not said anything about like, hey, this is going to be more like Far Cry, and it would not have surprised, like, never would have crossed my mind. But I'm definitely more. I mean, I was excited for it, but the the central like city town, also like Redfall, that's akin to Far Cry games generally. They have one area. Um, but the co-ops looks fun. I'm excited for it.
I I, I thought it was. I don't remember the trailer saying an
I don't
open
remember
world
hearing
shooter.
open world.
I don't remember that at all. So, okay, I missed that, but
I thought maybe I missed something, so I like went back and rewatched all of
I, I,
it.
I will
Yeah.
take the fact that I was driving to Florida with no service and had it playing on a cell phone for the Microsoft E3, so I'll blame that.
I might have just looked away from the computer for the 2 seconds it was on there. I literally do not remember seeing that on the screen.
Yeah.
If that were the case, I would have realized, yes, this is okay. This is not Left 4 Dead, because Left 4 Dead is not open world, obviously. But the fact that so many people came away with it still feeling like, man, this just looks like Left 4 Dead. I feel like, okay, if it's supposed to be like Far Cry, why didn't it look more like Far Cry in that
The
sense?
advertising of it being more, hey, look, it's Far Cry.
Yeah, I'm not saying they needed to explicitly say,
Yeah,
hey,
Yeah.
this is Far Cry, but it needed to look like similar to what you would do in Far Cry. And it just looked like you were running through corridors and shooting, or running through sections of levels
yeah.
and shooting stuff. And to me, it gets me concerned. I don't know if marketing knew how to actually market this thing, because I'm not sure Bethesda knows what this thing is yet. That's
And
that's my hot take, and I'm not trying to have a hot take, but when I see confusing marketing, that kind of tells me I'm not sure y'all know what to do with this, so y'all make this nice looking trailer. I'm still interested in it, and even if it was a Left 4 Dead, like, I'd still be interested in it. But the fact to come back and be like, "Yo, no, guys, sorry, it's actually more like Far Cry. Oh. So then you go back and it's like this looks like Far Cry. This doesn't look like Far Cry.
Why didn't you lead with this?
Right.
Well, or like, what do most of the Far Cry games market first? They're big bad,
Sure.
And I didn't see that, but I don't know if they wanted to be a clone at that point.
No, yeah, I think they're talking about
Structurally,
it is
the
Far
I
Cry.
don't know, from what I saw, enemy density 2 didn't seem nearly as crazy as some of the Left 4 Dead, and maybe that's why I didn't think so.
Sure. That's fair.
Because enemies were pretty spaced out. Like, I think Left 4 Dead, I think of hordes. In this, they were kind of scattered out, but from the sliver of gameplay that we've seen of this world.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's probably the biggest problem right there is we've not seen a lot of Redfall. There's only so much to go off of. So when you've only got so much to go off of, then you're going to make assumptions based on the information you have.
we know the
And
characters and the city.
when I
Like,
hear
that's the main
4-player
thing.
co-op, 4 of them have different abilities, and they're going up against vampires, which is the sexy undead, I guess you could put it.
Can I quote
Then
you on that?
That's quotable right there.
well, that's going in the intro.
Can someone clip that?
But
Oh,
in any case, when I'm going off of all of that, and like Anthony said, all of the clips we've seen, it looks kind of like, okay, I'm walking through this specific level.
doesn't look
there's
open. It
nothing
looks
that
tight.
looks open. Yeah, it looks like I'm doing a
More
specific mission. Like even Deathloop, as open as Deathloop is, which is
tight.
another Arcane game, is
Yeah.
it has very tight specific levels.
Yeah.
So nothing about their previous library would be telling me, okay, this is definitely full on open. So maybe that's part of it too. Is we're when we think Far Cry, we think huge open, but maybe this is more
Open.
maybe this is more Dishonored open. In the way that this one is, because Dishonored is technically an open world game and but has a lot more corridors and such. So maybe that's more what they're getting at when they say open. But I mean, you say Far Cry, I'm thinking a much bigger world than what Dishonored is. So well, I guess we'll find out more soon, right?
I would also say that with Redfall, comparing this to Far Cry, that also doesn't give me like the warmest vibes, because Bethesda is known for doing what Bethesda does. Ubisoft is known for copying what other people do outside of their formula. And to copy the idea of, I wouldn't say copy, inspiration, comparison. That's the best word. To compare this to Far Cry, and if you read this interview on Games Radar Plus, the stuff that they list out, it's very Ubisoft-y. And I don't know if the Bethesda audience wants anything similar to a Ubisoft type of experience with their Bethesda game. Like if they want a Ubisoft experience, they go play Far Cry. But to go back and be like, hey, this game is going to it's more akin to Far Cry, where you accept missions and you do them, and that it sounds very generic. And
Yeah.
if the only unique aspect of it is a few skills here, the fact that the hunters are whatever Bethesda came up with, and you're fighting against vampires, that is not a strong sell. It's exciting because it's a big AAA game for Bethesda. It's co-op. Maybe it's got a little Borderlands-y feel to it. Maybe there's some replayability there, but it's more generic than we think.
Well, I trust Arcane to come up with something fun, but whether or not it appeals to the masses, that's always the question. Because Arcane games are not ones that usually have ridiculous engagement. I think Game Pass is going to help them get over the hump, but there's every chance it ends up just like Deathloop did, where yes, it's very critically praised, but it just doesn't reach a lot of people because it's just not as interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah, because it's I mean, hey, we're Far Cry with vampires.
Yep.
Not a strong sell, in my opinion.
Yep. Vampires honestly are a tough sell though. Like I don't know what it
I don't
is
know
about it.
why.
In the game world. It feels
Is
like
there
it's a lot
sexier?
tougher a sell than yeah.
People
I
start
guess
feeling
so.
insecure.
They're intimidated by the sexy undead.
Yeah, zombies. You feel like you have power over them if you just shoot them in the head.
Yeah. Not vampires. Not vampires.
I'm going to refrain from commenting any further on.
Well, let's
See,
move.
sexiness makes people feel uncomfortable. There we go.
Let's go ahead and jump into Redfall and more of Redfall because Xbox is throwing a show, guys. Finally getting some information on some good old
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm guessing it's more or less a Nintendo Direct state of play kind of style idea. This isn't like a huge blowout, which honestly, this is something that Xbox has needed to do because you need, honestly, Nintendo has proven that it's best to just have these. You can have the big showcase, but you need some smaller shows around it to keep people focused on you, keep people focused on your brand. And we're going to be getting some info. As the news piece says, it actually says the latest info for Xbox games launching in the next few months. So we ought to be getting some stuff pretty quickly from the sounds of things. Now, the fun thing with this, they are focusing on 4 specific games. I'm completely fine with focus. They need to be focusing on this. I'm guessing it's probably going to be a little bit of Game Pass in there saying, hey, this is what's coming to Game Pass.
It's not going to be a little bit
Because
It will
they've
be
got to have
Game
some.
Pass.
Yeah, which of course all 4 of these games are coming to Game Pass. But we're getting an Elder Scrolls Online update. That is actually they're going to show off the next big chapter of it. Which, interestingly enough, if you actually look at their release schedule, they're actually showing stuff at 12 p.m. Pacific, and then they said they're going to have another major reveal for Elder Scrolls Online at 12:45.
Okay, it's Elder Scrolls Online. Move on.
So, well, I'm just saying in the sense of that means that I can guess the Xbox show is probably about 30 minutes total. Is my guess.
Okay,
This is probably a shorter show, more focused. We've got that. We've got the Forza Motorsport, which I know Anthony's very excited to get a good look at. We're going to get to see gameplay and details for that. We're going to get Minecraft Legends detail, the action strategy game. They're actually going to be showing the PvP multiplayer that they're going to have in there. And then, of course, Redfall. We're going to see single and multiplayer gameplay. And my guess is we're probably going to see a bunch of the open world, stuff like that. And, of course, the biggest thing is I don't think there's a way we don't get out of this show with all 4 of those not dated. All 4 of them, I expect we're going to get a release date for everything. Which brings me to the game that is not there, and that is Starfield. Starfield is not making an appearance at this show. I am disappointed about that, but they've very specifically called out Starfield is not here. We know Starfield is not here, and we are focused on giving it its own spotlight. And my guess is that is because they're still nailing down their release date for it, and they don't want to show it until they've got a firm, this is when that game is coming out. And I'm completely fine with that. Why? Because they told us. The issue would have been if we go into that show and there's no Starfield and they didn't say a word, Xbox fans would have every right to be mad. Like, completely mad at that, because that's the biggest game that's coming from Xbox as of this moment that we know is coming soon. And they need to make sure that they're behind that. So I do appreciate the fact that Xbox took the time to tell us we're not going to be able to show Starfield here, but wait, it is coming soon.
It did seem like that it was a bit reactionary in that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wait, no, guys, we know Starfield's not there, but
you could tell they were like, damage control.
Yeah, it felt like that. So I'm not sure they were going to say anything originally, which let's be honest. I like Aaron Greenberg. He has been a little sloppy with the marketing. So this is a smart decision here in putting out a mini show. But yeah, these things need to be taken care of much quicker. All right. So no, what do you have to say about it?
You guys pretty much hit all the points that I have. It's great. I do think we get dates for all of those. I think they chose those
Oh, yeah.
four specifically to call out because they're going to date them. My biggest takeaway is that something that I hope other studios do start doing and continue. Some specific dev studios do this when they're making like announcements, news pieces, stuff like that, but they're setting expectations for their shows. That is something that I hope is a growing trend because, you know, like you said, if Starfield was never told that it wasn't appearing, and then they did this like dev diary, dev showcase, and it didn't show, people would be pretty upset
Oh, yeah.
because the expectation was there. But the fact that they're going to be able to get Starfield its own show, I think is good. That way they can hopefully date it as well. I think we need to start getting dates for a lot of these. But yeah, I think it's good for Xbox gamers. Game Pass is going to be front and center, like we expect it to be. So it's good. They got it out early too. I remember David said one of the things he wants from Microsoft this year is an early showcase. So yeah, the fact that they're getting out in front of all of it's a good sign.
I believe it was January 24th or 25th was the date for the show. I don't have it. David has that, but
I can find it real quick. 25th.
It is the 25th.
Yeah,
that's
25th.
pretty good. That's 2 weeks, give or take.
Yeah, a little bit over.
A little under 2 weeks. But yeah, I am glad they're doing it. I would want to see the dates that they have for each of these games to be. I would at least want 2 within this quarter. So March. I don't know Microsoft's, but I'm just talking about like the overall January, March, February, March. 2 of them at least released by March, maybe even February. That'd be cool. And at least the other 2 released by summer. So the start of summer. So meaning second quarter, basically. So if we could get that, that'd be really exciting because now Microsoft has momentum throughout the year up until the summertime. I would imagine Redfall would be the game that comes out a little bit later, but if it releases closer, hey, that's even better. I want the dates to be close. I don't want it to see any winter. I don't want to see any quarter 3. I want to see quarter 1, quarter 2 release dates.
Yep, I agree. I don't think we're going to have anything to worry about there. I think Forza and Minecraft are probably your 2 that are early, which admittedly, I think that those are probably, I could see Minecraft being February and Forza being March. But I could also see Forza slipping into April, and I know the rumors right now are that Redfall is in May, and of course with the other rumor that they're going to literally put Starfield on June 30th, so it'll be right in their window that they said that was going to be in the next 12 months. We're putting it on the very last day of the 12th month.
Hey, it's in the 12 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
What else we got?
See, on our last big, huge nugget here is Ubisoft. I just said it wrong again already. Ubisoft.
Yeah, you can't pitch Splinter Cell anything until you get the name right.
Unless he changes the name once he takes over.
Exactly. Ubisoft reveals a ton of internal issues on a conference call. They were talking about new strategies because they're in a lot of financial trouble. If I'm remembering right, they are actually cutting about 200 million, if I'm not mistaken, to cut costs
I think it was
as
300
well.
pound.
I know it was it was a
number I
lot.
saw.
Whatever it
Yeah.
was ridiculous. But like they're reducing a lot of their earnings. They are restructuring. They've already actually canceled 3 unannounced projects. So it's never good for you to have multiple projects that haven't even been seen be canceled, especially considering they canceled 4 unannounced projects last year. So, and then you delay Skull and Bones for the 6th time. The 6th time. Almost like no one looked at this and thought this should be a game on its own. Like, I it took a while for Sea of Thieves to get where it got today. Like, Sea of Thieves did not launch well. People forget that. At this point, Skull and Bones, we just got to wait for it to actually launch. So it is the biggest issues right now is you got to look and think, are they in some big trouble? Like, this is not good. Their stock is not good. We've got to figure out what the main issue is behind the cratering of their business and how can they fix it? Because just cutting costs doesn't fix anything. Noah and I worked at GameStop for quite some time. Cutting costs does not fix everything.
No.
Nope.
So, there's a lot of things to think about beyond just, oh man, Mario plus Rabbids didn't do well. And of course I forget what his name is. Eves, is that right? Or Yves? It's another name I can't say. Yeah. When he gets up on stage, it pretty much tells his staff, "It's all in your court. Y'all got to do better."
All's in your court.
And from what I understand, the situation, at least in the studios, from what Tom Henderson reported, the media is definitely over exaggerating some of it from employees he has spoken to. This isn't just him guessing. This is him talking to people at Ubisoft. So, that they may not be as worried as we are, but it's still not a good situation.
I mean, Eves doesn't put off like, hey, we're okay, but we need to cut some costs. We need to do some things. Developers, you got to make sure you're doing what you need to do. We're fine, guys. No, it doesn't come off like that at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned about Ubisoft because they're shifting back to a publishing style that got them in trouble in the first place, and that is acting like Activision, where they really focus on these specific franchises. They don't do anything else and expect those franchises to carry them. When we had 7 Assassin's Creeds year after year, what happened? We got burned out way faster than anybody had gotten burned out with Call of Duty. There's only so much you could do with a game like Assassin's Creed. It's not going to be something like Call of Duty. Ubisoft is a publisher and developer that likes to experiment. They are one of the big ones that do kind of put some different things out there. Who else would come up with something like Mario plus Rabbids? Ubisoft. Who else would be willing to put out something like Beyond Good and Evil? Ubisoft.
In all fairness, they haven't put out the second one. It's
been in
pre-production for like 10 years.
I get that.
But and the first one was a financial failure.
Well, yeah. It eventually actually became okay once they started reselling it and selling it over time.
Yeah, when I bought it at Dollar General for $10.
Hey, but you bought it for $10. So a little bit more money there. But, and they do iterations. They're crowd followers as well. If they're not coming up with something unique, we see Rainbow Six Siege. Let's just see us go with Rainbow Six on it, which it plays so much differently, but it turned out to be good. But then you got something like Hyperscape that was absolutely trash because they were trying to figure out, what kind of BR can we make? So they are copycats as well as they create. I mean, they did create Assassin's Creed in the first place. It became what it is now. So that that is Ubisoft, not the company that has one, two, three, maybe four franchises that they stick with and hope that those become these huge, lasting yearly sellers in the same way Activision does. They don't have that kind of cachet, not with their audience and not with the type of franchises that they have. It just doesn't work out for them. So they need to figure out, okay, what do we do best? And stick to that. Stop trying to be like everybody else. And I get it. Part of it is investor issue. The investors want their money. They see what Activision does. They see what EA does. They look at the billions in mobiles that they're making. They see the billions that Call of Duty brings in. They see what Epic does with Fortnite. They're like, Ubisoft, yo, where's our money? And Ubisoft is like, hey, we're working on it, but they can't. That's not their identity. That's not who they are. So the fact that they're going back to this, it's going to burn out again. They're only going to take Assassin's Creed so far. They can only do so many with Tom Clancy. It's going to burn out again, and then they're going to have to go back to who they are. Let's put out something a little different. Hey, what's this thing? Just Dance? Yeah, make that. Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, I agree. They need to experiment or just do something else because what is going on right now is not working, both financially and leadership. I think this is the part where I would normally segue into why David should run, your video game company. Uh, the change in leadership. I've always been an advocate that responsibility is top down. It is never, bottom up. There are things that need to be changed, and leadership management needs to realize that it starts with them. The fact, case in point, Skull and Bones. A game's been in development for what 10 years now. 2013 was when it started. Um, that game has to be contractually obligated or something to
The
release.
Singapore government, they took tax money to yeah, that's why it's literally obligated to release.
Yeah. So my question for Ubisoft, have you guys not heard of early access, or can it not release in early access? Because that seems like as many problems they have had. I think a just Game Pass it, put it out for $30, put an early access sticker on it, and at least get it out. Because at this point, I may be alone in this statement, but the excitement has come and gone. That game, when I hear it's delayed, it's like, oh, I forgot that was even a thing. I don't care at this point. It could come out and be the greatest thing ever, but my expectations for it are so low at this stage that I'm just afraid that nobody cares anymore, and that's going to hurt them financially in sales.
I agree with that at least. Skull and Bones was never going to be this phenomenal project. I could it have been a passion project? Sure. But part of it is what got Ubisoft into the issue they're in now. And I actually have a bit of a counter because Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the last Assassin's Creed game that came out. And it is the second most profitable title in Ubisoft history. So if anything, they probably need to double down a little bit on that. And I'm not saying double down on Assassin's Creed, saying that they actually need to double down on their expertise where they've been really good, and that's with coming up with unique stories. They've been able to come up with these really cool narratives, and they've got to lean into that because they have gone way too hard on this whole free-to-play crap. And that's been evident for a long time. They kept pushing these different projects, these different live service things, because they were like, oh, this has to be the thing, this has to be the thing, and investing a bunch of money into stuff that people just did not care about. Hyperscape, they've already closed that down. I think X Defiant could probably be pretty fun, but like it it isn't going to put a dent into the Call of Duties of the industry. It's just not. It won't even put a dent into their Rainbow Six portion of the industry, which is declining a bit. What they have to do is lean into things that they are working on right now, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, which I think is going to be a fantastic game because it goes back to that old school Ubisoft ideas with what they did with the original Assassin's Creed. It's a much smaller experience. It's a much more contained experience. That's honestly what a lot of people are wanting right now. Not everybody wants to jump into a open world 160 200 hour game. This seems like a really good idea, and it's not as expensive as all the other games are. It's not $70. It's actually a lower priced Assassin's Creed game. And then lean heavy into the two upcoming license game you have because they are some of the biggest IPs on the planet. Massive is putting out Avatar, which is a open world single player game. I don't remember, there might be some multiplayer in that. Massive is also putting out a Star Wars project, which has been talked about as being this huge galaxy where you get to create your own character. We'll have a narrative to be following throughout it. These are the kind of things that people want. You got to lean into these things that are selling. As much as I think Mario plus Rabbids is a phenomenal game, and the first one did sell very well, it shows in sales. The sales were disappointing in November and December for Mario plus Rabbids. Why? Because people weren't just buying it because it was Mario at that point. They knew what kind of gameplay to expect from it, from the first one. They knew it's a real-time strategy game. And, as much as I love real-time strategy, and I know there are people out there that love real-time strategy, Lil Timmy doesn't want to play real-time strategy most of the time. Lil Timmy wants to play a regular style Mario game. So Ubisoft needs to lean into these games that draw the crowds, that they've been able to draw the crowds with, and especially with some really great licensed narrative-based games from Star Wars and Avatar, two humongous properties. I think they've got a good chance to rebound, but man, they got no margin of error. I mean, they just straight up don't. They've got to get rid of all the loose weight with all of these free to play is what got them into this hole, because they kept pushing all of these free to play experiences thinking they were going to make all this money, and it didn't work because they didn't know how to make a good free to play experience. You've got to do it right, and unless you've got the people there that know how to do it right, it's not going to be done right. That's why Sony spent over $3 billion on Bungie, so that maybe they can make some good live service games having some oversight by somebody who knows what they're doing. And Ubisoft flopped in a lot of these free-to-play things, and they're experiencing the blowback of that right now because suddenly they don't have games coming from other sides because the people are involved in these free-to-play projects. So they're having to the only big games from Ubisoft that came out this last Christmas was Just Dance and Mario plus Rabbids. Mario plus Rabbids was not going to be this humongous seller, and if once again, it's something that you look at as it's probably declining from the first one because you've got less casual audience picking it up because they know it's RTS. And Just Dance is another thing that they've really leaned into live service with, but they're also selling it in codes and boxes. So,
Just Dance should have been bigger.
Yeah.
It was just they.
Sometimes it just doesn't work.
No, it's not that it didn't work. It's that it's less than what the previous one was, and that word's going to get around, and people are going to realize, oh, I'm just going to stick with Just Dance 2022 until Just Dance 2023 is built up the way it was supposed to be. So I get what they were doing with Just Dance 2023. Basically, it's supposed to be the last Just Dance, and it's going to be a live service, and everything runs through that game now. Totally fine with that idea, but you broke down everything else in the process, and that doesn't sound good. That doesn't feel good. So it's fine in and of itself. Just Dance should be huge, but Ubisoft messed that up as well. Instead, they should have pushed it back instead of releasing it until there was way more content for that game. They messed up there. But David, we agree. We agree on the idea that look, they are putting out Avatar at some point. They're putting out Star Wars at some point. This is what I'm talking about. Like they branch out.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with them
Yep.
focusing on Assassin's Creed. They should. They absolutely should focus on Assassin's Creed. What it sounds like when they talk is that's all that, like, beyond Avatar and Star Wars, and maybe I don't know now that they've canceled 7 projects. They were moving, what it felt like was moving into Activision territory, where it's all Activision has is what it has. Yep. And if those fail, Activision is doomed in that way. And so Activision has to make sure every single Call of Duty hits. And they're doing a very good job of making sure everyone hits, but they have to make sure it hits. Now, with the Blizzard properties, they have to make sure those hit because they ain't got nothing else. Diablo 4 has to hit. If they were to make another StarCraft, which they're not because StarCraft 2 didn't hit that well.
I'm so
but
sad.
you wonder,
that makes me so sad.
It does.
Yeah.
And so,
and I get it. And part of it is they went to the wrong area to branch out. Free to play should never have gone to this high end free to play market, and that being all that they're doing. Because that's what Beyond Good and Evil 2 is supposed to be, is another live service game.
Yeah.
Which is a huge mistake.
That would be a mistake. So my point with them the idea, it seems like they're going back to this world where at one point Assassin's Creed needed to hit. And if it didn't hit, Ubisoft was in trouble. If Tom Clancy's whatever was the next thing, it needed to hit. And if it didn't hit, then it would be a problem. And so then you had stuff like Just Dance. It was like, oh, okay, like this is a really cool idea. This is going to have longevity to it. It's going to sell. So if, a Rainbow Six Extraction comes out, it's like, okay, yeah, that didn't quite work out the way we wanted it to. That's fine. We still got some profit from X amount of IPs and all this. I don't know how they do their books, but you understand, but profit is profit wherever it comes from. So that money gets circulated around in some form or fashion. So the fact that the idea of, I like what you said, stick to stories. It is what Ubisoft does very well. Like a lot of the Rainbow Sixes, the Divisions, even in some form or fashions, really any of the Tom Clancy properties, when they do it right and they got the good stories and stuff like that, they hit. Assassin's Creed, it hits. So if they could get back to that and making those games, which it looks like they're going to do with Avatar, with Star Wars, that's your bag, Ubisoft. So go ahead. Stick with your Assassin's Creed. Stick with your Tom Clancy properties. But do it where you're strong, not trying to create these crazy, sorry, the Division Heartland, it's not it. That's not it. People will play it. It will make money. It will not make the money Ubisoft wants it to make. It's not what people want from the Division. It'll be more. But at some point, people are going to be like, yo, we want more the Division. Okay, that is where you need to focus. They've already committed to Heartland, so we know they're going to put it out at some point. But it's stuff like that. It's like, nah, Ubisoft, that's not you. Stick to you.
Stay in your lane.
You do you.
All right. Is that all the news we got?
That is all the news we have. Yay.
Yes.
News.
Okay. Then, with that said, let's talk about 3 indie games. Each of us, we each have 3 indie games that we're going to look forward to in 2023. So, David, why don't you start us off?
I'm going to start us off with a little game called The Invincible. It's not one that a whole lot of people know about, but I'm
Okay.
very excited for it. I believe you may have some video if it works. Ooh, looky
Yeah, yeah.
there. Well,
Go ahead and talk about it.
that's actually a game called Little Devil Inside. I can go ahead and jump over to that if need
Oh
be.
no, I marked it as the Invincible. Oh no. Now
The
I don't know
Invincible
what's
Little
what.
Devil Inside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We're doing a crossover event already.
Well, you keep talking about it, and I will put it up.
The Invincible is this cool looking game where you're going to this planet called Regis 3, and I don't know if either of y'all have played games like, trying to think of the name of the game.
Mario.
No, yes, exactly. Mario. Um, it's always one of those ones. I don't believe it's What Remains of Edith Finch is kind of one of those style games where it's just this. It's a lot more of a quiet, serene kind of game. This one has a lot of that to it, where you're more figuring out what's going around you, but the gameplay that they've shown, you have been talking to someone and trying to do some kind of minor puzzle things, but it's this minimalist design that I really really like in this
A minimalist
retro
trailer too.
kind
Jeez.
of, yeah. No,
Short.
it jumps into
Oh,
the
okay.
actual full thing right
I
here.
was like, wow.
But it's this narrative adventure game, and I really like, I'm sure you see the retro design here where it's got like the actual mic in front of the face and the dials the way they are. When she goes up, she'll end up going up to like a ship here in a moment, and she'll actually get a reading from one of the ships, and it'll be some actual like pictures. It's not actually video or anything. So it just, I love the retroness of it, the
Pictures aren't a
aesthetic
thing
to it.
anymore.
But there's some sort of hidden mystery to all of this as to a crew that's missing, and I'm just very intrigued by everything that's going on. And I just love the design, the way it looks, the whole exploring, almost, I know it's not Mars, but it makes me think of Mars. So, but it makes me think of just the set like back in like the 50s 60s, the little toy guns that people said were like the Martian weapon, the laser guns and stuff like that. It's that kind of an aesthetic, and I just love it. And I'm assuming just there's going to be like some little cool puzzles that you're going to be solving as you go around and whatnot. So, and I'm sure you see what I'm talking about when I say like it's kind of similar to the walking simulators, but it's not exactly a walking simulator.
It's an advanced walking simulator.
Yes. So it definitely more of a narrative kind of adventure with some puzzle elements to it. So I'm looking forward to it. It looks really really cool to me.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Really
one thing, is
nice.
it's a really pretty looking game. Like,
Yeah,
cuz right
I
here is where they show the going to recover the reading to find out what happened to the crew.
yeah, it looks I'm fine with narrative adventure games, and this looks good. Um I'll have to listen
Especially if
to it
you
with the
like,
sound on.
especially if like you uncover the mystery like a little bit as you go.
Yeah.
I
It's
see
like
what you're
the
talking about with the
unraveling.
picture.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
these
that's what I'm getting at.
okay.
That's like super
Yeah.
cool to me. It's like it's
Mhm.
you're not getting a
Yeah.
recording of what happened. It's leaning into that retroness of
I,
everything. Like you're trying
I
to
forgot what
find the
those are
shot.
called. Yeah.
Yeah, the negatives almost, I guess, would just about be kind of similar to what it is, but like it's really cool how they've done everything.
Nice. Okay. This was called the Invincible.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. All right. Noah, what you got for us?
I guess I'll just go through my list alphabetically. The first one I have is Another Crab's Treasure. That one, the name
Mhm.
alone drew me in.
All right.
Uh, so I don't know if we're gonna get the trailer, if it's the right one. I hope I did the right ones. Let's see. Switch.
No, I have to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
put in the
I
right
think
one.
it's
So
funny
this
that it's
one,
rated T for teen.
yeah, that would surprise me. So this one, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're playing as a hermit crab who has
There's
lost its
nothing
shell.
self-explanatory about
Yeah,
that.
not it. So this one, the devs are calling it a Souls-like, but their take on it is Shells-like. So it's essentially a Souls game, but you're playing as a little crab with what looks like a fork eating utensil. It's got some grappling elements, and you fight just different types of crabs. The thing that drew me in, I want to see um, how in depth they go with like exploring the seafloor, like the different types of environments that they can do with this. I'm sure the story is going to be pretty good. I'm hoping they at least put it into the game and not give you like little lore pieces that you pick up along the way, like the Souls games do. Uh, but yeah, this one just you're a hermit crab, fighting, looking for your own shell, and it's a Souls game. I could not get excited for this one. It
This
looks
is
like a
definitely
fun
one of the
time.
most random things. Like, definitely one of the most random ideas someone has come up with.
Exactly. Yeah. So it looks super fun too. The gameplay looks fun. Um, so yeah, I'm here for it.
This is an example of why we love indie games, because
Oh yes.
You don't
nobody
get this
would have,
stuff in AAA. Yeah, nobody would have greenlit
not even
the.
double A. This is who would have thought to make a Souls game, but you basically, put it under the sea.
Under the
that's
Sea.
that's that's certainly unique. I like the way this the way it looks. The fact that it is rated T is
Yeah,
quite interesting.
there's gonna be
I
some heavy.
There's
maybe it's
gonna
because
be some
pollution.
there's gonna be some jokes in
Yeah,
there that is like,
It has
yeah.
to be a Souls
something,
like
man.
that's funny. I don't think we've seen that too.
Like
Maybe this is funny.
like we get like lots of in-game dialogue with other characters because it looks like you're going to be exploring different regions or areas of the seafloor.
And there's
So
some
maybe we'll
fun
get some.
platforming in there too, looks like.
Mhm, yeah, hopefully
You
get
said
interesting character interactions.
I
you
hope
said
they
this is
find
this. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I hope they find a way to have some unique abilities with some of the shells where it's more than just, oh, this one's tougher.
Yeah,
Yeah, I imagine we just saw one that glowed, so I maybe it illuminates dark areas. Maybe you can
yeah.
equip and
They
unequip shells.
yeah they said like the litter that's on like the seafloor and stuff you'll is definitely integrated into the gameplay. So there's lots of fun stuff you can do with that.
Another
But
crab's
yeah,
treasure. All right, I like it. Put that on my list. All right. One of mine is Season a Letter to the Future. This one is coming out on PlayStation and PC. This one is also a narrative adventure, and basically, you are a person where the world is suffering through will suffer through a cataclysmic event. I think it is something along the lines of dealing with climate change, and so you feel, I don't know if it's obligated, I don't know if it's you're tasked with it, but basically you have to record and take pictures
Hmm.
of the world before it goes away, or at least before the next generation can rise up and live however they live. You're basically trying to record everything so that way whoever lives after you can remember this was what the world like was before. So that was a weird sentence, but it's I played a little bit of the demo. I played it once and then it went away, so I don't know if it was like a self-destructing
It's
demo. I
probably
wish I
a
did.
it's probably a timed demo or something.
Yeah, I don't know, but it was on Steam, and then I tried to play it the next day because I wanted to finish more of it, and it was like, here's the store. It's like, okay,
Every
but
time I see these pictures, though, or these trailers, it reminds me how pretty this game is. Like it's just really looks good.
it's a very pretty game, which matters if you're going to make a game where you have to take pictures. So
Oh yeah,
the interesting thing, though, is when I was playing the demo, the multitasking element was fascinating because it doesn't seem like a game that has a challenge because as you're walking around, you are looking for things to take pictures of, you are listening to record certain things. And as you get closer to some things, a prompt will come up and basically it won't tell you to take a picture, but it'll basically like, hey, this take a picture of this if you want. Sometimes it'll lead to an objective completion. Sometimes it's just this is a landmark that you've discovered. Take a picture of it or record some audio of it. But while you're doing either of those things, you could be looking for a picture to take, but then you miss listening to something else because you're so focused on taking a picture, or vice versa. So, like, you're listening for audio, but you're missing things you could be taking a picture of. And so it kind of presented maybe an unintended challenge. I don't know if the developers meant to do it, but I felt challenged by it because I found myself recording something and I realized when I turned around, I was like, oh, there's something to take a picture of. I just walked
Hmm.
by because I was so focused on recording this piece of audio that I heard. So I really find that fascinating. I hope that's the case because that would be a really interesting way to challenge people inside a walking simulator, narrative adventure type of game. So the narrative in and of itself didn't really get much of it. I hope it is good. I imagine it will be. There's also one more thing. You can ride a bike and you can literally have total control of the pedaling. I don't know
Hmm.
why. I don't know what the purpose of that is. Maybe I could have figured that out if the demo was still there, but you could manually control all the bike pedaling or obviously have it done in a much simpler way. So I don't know what that mechanic is there for and what that's supposed to do, but I just throw that out there. Maybe this game is supposed to be somewhat uh, challenging in certain ways rather than just you just walk around and take pictures and record audio. So, season a letter to the future. I am looking forward to playing it when I get the chance. All right, David, what do you got next? Or your
The
second?
next one is the one that were trying to do the first one with video, Little Devil Inside.
All right, keep talking. I'll put it up. Got a lot of videos here.
Yeah, there's so the fun thing with this one is
That's
we've
it. That's
not
it.
heard of this. Yes, it is. We've not heard of this one for a little while. The developer has been kind of quiet on it. We're assuming that it's coming in 2023. The last time they showed it was in 2021 at the State of Play. This is actually
Mm.
the trailer that we're seeing is from the State of Play, and they've kind of just went silent, but it's just one of those games that looks really unique. The character models, the all the way they've done the art. It's actually a third person action RPG survival. Like, there's a lot of elements that they have put into this game in
Battle
this
Royale.
Victorian yeah, exactly. um and like sometimes that from a developer, it's we're throwing a bunch of crap against the wall to see what sticks. But with this, like all the way that they've shown all of these little gameplay bits and stuff, this seems more like, something like a cake or something that just has a lot of really good ingredients and they mix really well, and you get something good out of it. So they're definitely going pretty ambitious with it with a lot of those elements, and they're bringing a multiplayer feature to it. So I'm very interested to see how they handle that.
Is that co-op type of multiplayer
I believe
or
it's supposed to be co-op, if
okay?
I'm correct. So, but this, what some of what we're seeing with the trailer is like they kind of do it as an overworld map style where you're like walking through stuff and doing having these encounters and stuff. But the some of the different you're fighting monsters pretty much is how you're going through. You're this explorer who's going and taking care of things. And the first trailer we saw in one of the state of plays just was one of the funniest, weirdest things. I didn't bring that trailer in, but I highly suggest anybody interested in this game go watch the first trailer. the editing of that trailer is just so great, and really enjoyed that what they did with it. But it seems like there's just going to be some fun, interesting stories with chasing down these, hunting these monsters and whatnot, and everything just looks really neat. Like every time I see it again, it's like I think it's one style of game, and then suddenly it does something different. So just one of those interesting things.
I look at that overworld map and I'm reminded of Cuphead because it has a unique
Okay.
animation style you don't really see in video games, and it's not yarn, but it has that kind of texture to it, and then it has that
Yeah.
kind of like stilted
Almost a
animation.
Yeah, a
claymation,
little bit
Yeah,
action figure kind of almost.
definitely low frame rate on purpose type of animation. The way they bounce across the map, I
it's
love that.
clean though.
It
It's
is.
really clean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is not what
I'm
I would expect from this
yeah,
game.
exactly. And that's why it compels me to want to play it, because it looks so different than everything else.
Fascinating.
Like,
I'm
yeah,
curious to know where the obviously little devil inside. I'm curious to know what
the
that's
whole
referring
name,
to.
yeah. We just came
Yeah,
up with this. This was
that's a
just whatever
little
we came up with.
dark, name, but this one
It
doesn't.
is.
The tone doesn't really. So
Yeah. Every time I see it,
it
I'm
looks
like,
good.
man, I wish this was out already. Because
Yeah.
I just want to see what it is
Oh,
as a
the little
whole.
bouncing running looking up the hill.
Yeah.
Come with
Always
me,
crazy.
donkey.
Yeah, let's go. Aw. Yeah,
All
that
right.
one. You can have that one.
Little devil inside. I like it. Noah, what you got?
Next up, so mine is a. I could not put an RPG on on my list because I do love me some RPG. So mine is Sea of Stars. That's the one I'm
Hmm.
going with next. It's got really great sprites. It's got that retro
Oh
visual.
yeah.
Yeah, the and uh, it's set from the creator. I've also heard it's a prequel to The Messenger, which really intrigues me. Um, but yeah, so it's a turn-based RPG where the story is about two children who have the power of it's such like anime inspired like story, but like the power of the sun and moon, and they have to use those powers to stop a evil alchemist, which because of plot points and plot lines, only their powers can stop this evil monster army. But it's the games that I like to do in between like the big AAA open world games that feel like not the same, but we get a lot of them every year. And so these is just nice relaxing game that you can go in, chill out, play for a couple of hours, and kind of refreshes you with the genre of gaming. So the the animation, the storyline, it all just draw me in immediately. Uh, and then there was one clip you saw where it was really cool, where she did an attack and then kind of like deflected it off of each enemy.
Yeah, that was
That was
interesting.
really nice. So I'm hoping, yeah, as long as they can change up some of the gameplay, uh, like maybe do an evolution to the turn-based style, it it was on my list immediately. I can't wait for that one.
I really like the 16-bit like
Yeah,
look to it. It
it's
looks really
all the
nice.
sprites are
Looks
clean.
authentic.
Yeah.
The colors really pop
Smoothed
in this
out.
one too.
Hmm.
Like there's so many of these kind of games that everything looks the same, and they've managed to really make sure all the color palette is really varied.
But even the way the levels are designed, the environments,
Like different
there's
regions almost. Yeah.
it is,
And I
and
can
there's
fish.
there's so much going on, and yet it doesn't feel busy,
Yes,
and I love that.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
just
this
it's right up my alley. So yeah, the
same.
RPGs, the retro inspirations. Yeah, like you can see the attack bouncing off different. Like
Yeah, that's. I
I'm
wonder if
curious to
that's like
see
a
if that's.
timing thing. Like you use it, and
Yeah,
then you have to like time it to keep it going. Oh,
I mean
that'd be interesting.
um, maybe it's like, hopefully it's like a momentum thing too, where if you time it specifically, it'll do more damage.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that one immediately was on my list. So, but it
This
looks
one's
just
going
like
on
a
my
real
list
chill
too.
game,
You
real
speaking to me,
chill,
Noah.
relaxing game. Yeah.
Man, you speaking to me. All right. One of mine is a game that is coming to PC and consoles for the first time. I normally wouldn't talk about a game that's already been out, but it's only been out for mobile. Now it's coming to PC and consoles, and that is Atone, Heart of the Elder Tree. So this one is interesting. They have a demo for this one. You can play it on Steam, and it's interesting because the selling point, at least one of them, is the combat is turn based, but it's actually rhythm. It's rhythm based. So
Hmm.
what's going on is you'll get into a fight and you'll have to input all these things over some rhythms, and the music is nice, by the way. It's actually very fun to listen to as you are inputting these inputs. And then as you are fighting, the combat is going on in the background. And
Hmm.
so the more accurate you are with your inputs, the more damage you do to the enemy. The more inaccurate, the more damage they do. And so there's no, at least I didn't see health meters or anything like that. But it is interesting how it's almost choreographed combat based on how well or poorly you're doing with nailing the rhythms. And it can get pretty complicated at times. But what I love is that it's really accurate. When you hit it on the beat that you want to hit it on, it hits. So if you mess up, it's on you. So I really like that. But the story is interesting as well. It is based on Nordic mythology. And so there's this village of people who worship these Nordic gods or whatever. And the gods have turned on them because they have been people who uh, basically turned on the gods. They didn't obey and, do things like that. So the gods left them to their own devices. And now there is this subset of people who are trying to win back the favor of the gods, and some subset of people who just don't give a flip. And so you're in this society where people are doing different things to each other, and you have to navigate that, as well as I believe you have to find the killer of your father, or maybe you find your father. I don't remember the detail of that, but so you're dealing with all these relationships and things like that. And so there's choice driven things, and you have to live with those choices. But what was also interesting, there's some puzzles, and they're pretty difficult at times. But some of those puzzles reveal things. Either it's a secret, or it could be a story beat or something. And if you fail the puzzle, that's it. You don't get a
Hmm.
second chance. Sometimes, not all the time, but there are some puzzles where you don't get a second chance. So it's really interesting in that regard, where it's less like, oh no, like what did I miss? So some of those puzzles you
Yeah.
got to really pay attention and try to figure out. There was one puzzle I was just like, I don't know, and then it finished, and I was like, oh shoot, like I can't retry this thing. Like I tried leaving the screen and coming back, and it was like, nope, you done. So I find that really fascinating, and it's got a lot of accolades from being on the mobile store. So uh, I'd never heard of this game beforehand. So now that it's coming to PC and console, I'm paying attention. But it looks interesting.
Oh yeah, it really does. I like the storyline aspect to it.
Has a very abstract kind of art style as well. That's really cool.
Yeah, that very sharp edged
Hmm.
kind of art style. Yeah. So that is Atone, Heart of the Elder Tree. All right, David, what is your last one?
Last one that I've got for y'all is a game called Chia. And
Oh, that sounds
at
familiar.
first I said Touchia and then realized that it wasn't, pterodactyl. So,
Fair enough.
but what's really amazing about this, especially when you look at some of the gameplay that they show, this is a 9-person team making this game.
I believe it.
That's
It's
a sheesh if I've ever had one.
it's a really pretty game. You can see just kind of
It is
did
pretty.
some of the different elements that they've got with it. It really reminds me of and it's going to remind a lot of people of Breath of the Wild. It screams Breath of the Wild, especially once you see some of the different things in the game. Like especially as soon as she pops out the glider, it's immediately like, okay, it's
Yep.
Breath of the Wild. I see
Well,
that.
you saw the climbing too.
I see the stamina
Yeah.
bar. I see all the free climbing, all that different stuff. It's like, okay, yeah. But like it the island just looks so pretty and serene. It's actually based on the real island of New Caledonia. It's a small one in the Pacific, which is actually where the two founding members of Awaseb actually live. They actually lived there. So it's really cool that they're able to take, their culture, things that they've lived around and whatnot. They've a lot of the landmarks in the game are actually from. They're obviously changed names for legal purposes, but they're from New Caledonia, and of course the biggest thing with this is like looking at that jumping ability that she has to jump into these animals and these inanimate objects and stuff. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be able to, like, I'm trying to get up to this specific mountain instead of like, oh, I've only got so much stamina to climb up. Maybe I jump into a bird and fly up to the top of the mountain to get to this hard to reach area. Or like they showed a spot in this trailer where she jumped into a lantern and then jumped out of it to like attack one of the bad things that's in the trailer, the enemies that's in the trailer. So it might be a good way of hiding to keep yourself from not being seen by some of these enemies that you're going to encounter. So I'm I'm looking forward to exploring around this island and such, because it just looks like it's going to be fun. It looks endearing, and of course, all the fun character customization is going to be great. And playing the ukulele, because playing music in video games and stuff is always just this cute little thing.
We don't have to worry about one thing with this Breath of the Wild ish like thing. Weapon breaking. There's none of
Nope.
that. I don't see one weapon.
Hey,
So we don't have to worry about that. Fantastic.
So it's the perfect Breath of the Wild game for Anthony.
I mean, it might be, but I don't know.
Zelda.
I will say it looks fantastic. Like
It's
this is the
gorgeous.
one on your list that I was like, okay, this needs to go on my list to play this year. This looks really, really good. And this is pre-alpha footage that we're watching.
Yeah.
That's what's bonkers. So the fact that it looks that good, it looks that charming, that playful, that much fun off of some pre-alpha footage. Yeah. I'm looking forward to this one.
I could see this being a good family game, a good introductory game for a kid before Zelda. Zelda's not necessarily the hardest game in the world, but it certainly requires a lot of attention. And I could see this requiring less attention for a younger kid to be able to enjoy this comparatively. It's more chill than Zelda, because I mean, we obviously haven't played this, so we don't know if you're going to encounter anything like it, but encountering a guardian in flippin' Zelda is like, oh my god.
Yeah.
That's when it gets real.
Yeah. I remember encountering Stalfos for the first time in Zelda Ocarina of Time. Granted, I played the original Zelda when that came out, but yeah, I mean, still, it was like, whoa, yo, okay.
Yeah, no,
This is hard.
I appreciate the like they could have just stuck with like, oh, I can just traverse the island, and then jump off of cliffs and kind of clone the Zelda Breath of the Wild form. But like the different ways of traversal, I really appreciate. Like the one where it showed the clip of her jumping using momentum from the tree was really cool. But yeah, the traversal is what's really drawing me in right now.
But the personality they add to her, too, she doesn't just jump from the tree, she starts backflipping. Like,
There's going to be like style points for doing
Right?
different
Oh,
type
yeah.
of flips. Like
seriously, there
Well, it
needs
looks
to
like
be
it's probably
for
like
that.
it looks like it's probably like Spider-Man, how when you flick off of the web, you can do some tricks and stuff. It looks like there's some button prompts there for
give you some like
giving
momentum
you
or
some
something.
style points. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
And
you
then, I
like
mean,
when you
that's
change
all.
your clothes and stuff. She like gives you this
Yeah.
little like wink.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
already like this character.
we've not even talked about the raft here. Like, I'm assuming that's going to be a big part of being able to sail around and stuff. So
Hmm.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like that's probably going to be more Wind Waker like. It's probably not going to be a lot to see in the ocean, but
yeah,
um, it'll still be cool.
It's definitely nice to have.
Yeah, just hop on the water for a little bit. As long as we don't have to do a bunch of fetch quests, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what killed Wind
Yeah, there
Waker.
she goes. Style.
Just pops out the yeah. That's dope. All right, and this is Chia.
Chia,
Tachia.
Chia. Chia.
to
All
Chia.
right. Who knows? All right. So those are the. Oh, did I say mine?
I don't think Noah or
No,
you actually did
we
your
still got to
last
do
three,
ours.
Oh,
your
sorry.
number
Yeah, yeah. You
threes.
were
Yeah.
first, David. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Noah.
I was just trying to skip over us, including
No, no,
himself.
no. Well,
That's
I was
new.
skipping over myself too.
Yeah,
It's not
like that's,
personal.
I mean, yeah. Mine,
So personally, including himself.
including himself, or it might be David taking over his computer. But my last one is, I guess, just games with weird titles intriguing them. But the Plucky Squire is my final one. It's kind of same reason David like the Devil Inside Me, where there's different genres. This one reminds me a lot of It Takes Two, minus the co-op, where there's different genres implementing. So you play as the Plucky Squire in this one. I believe his name is Jot, whose whole goal is to go on adventures. And so the gameplay, as you can see, it kind of starts off with kind of like top-down, old school Zelda slashing. But here in a second, it's going to transcend. First off, I like, you
In the
see like the
storybook,
punch
though.
mount. Yeah, it's in this like flip storybook. And so
Holy
here in a
flip.
second, you're going to see
Cool.
you actually hop out and it transitions from 2D
Oh
to
my
like a
goodness.
3D adventure.
That was
Um,
nuts.
and throughout the different areas, that you'll be exploring, there'll be areas where you hop back and forth between 2D and 3D. And there's a plethora of different genres that you'll actually do. So you've got like I said, the top down side, you saw the punch out almost boxing. You got 3D adventure, and then there was a segment where it's like a bullet hell style. So that one, it's taking all of these different genres, and it looks like it's going to put them together very nicely.
Devolver's
I,
paying for it, and they do such a good job of finding the most
yeah,
unique things.
yeah. When I saw Devolver like on that very first, I was like, okay, this gives me hope. So yeah, um, this one just really looks fun. I think, and that's what you play games for, is to have fun. So
This looks
yeah, just
fantastic.
it looks. Yeah, I saw the
Anthony's
is
names.
like,
like-
crap, I have more games to buy from here than I did on our most anticipated.
Seriously. This is like contrast advanced. Like contrast took you to like you become the shadow and now you become part of this is like nah, you go from storybook to straight 3D world. It's like
It's
wow.
one thing if they would have, they would have got so much press and, creativity, accolades with just doing a game where you're in a storybook.
Yeah.
But they literally took it to the next level, and you're going to be on this little desk. Now, I don't know how much farther out we'll get to explore beyond like this little desk, but as tiny as we are, it looks really good.
Really good.
I mean, you get to run over to that mug and actually jump into it. I mean, geez.
I'm sure there's going to be very specific things where you can do all of this. Obviously, you're not going to be able to jump in anything. But
Anything is me. Yeah.
I imagine it's going to be very cool instances where it's like, ooh, I wonder if I could jump in, and then you can, and you're doing something extremely random.
As long as they don't blatantly tell me, I want to be able to, I guess, get surprised with what I'm able to change up and interact with. I don't want it to just be like, go to this coffee cup and, do this. I want to be surprised.
Hold up. I'm just going to rewind it. Look at all this room. This is where I think maybe we're not stuck to the desk. Maybe we will go to the nightstand or the bed or the floor.
The skateboard. Yeah. I'm hoping, we're not just contained to this one area. But yeah, just it looks so good, and I discovered it by just, oh, Plucky Squire. That's a funny name. Let's look at that. Uh,
Well, right in this
so
opening,
yeah,
one of the things I love seeing is like when it goes to the whole bridge thing, like he hits the thing and throws the word bridge over there and it makes the bridge. So just fun little game concepts.
Yeah, it seems like it has a WarioWare esque
Yeah.
gameplay to it, where this isn't a full platformer or action game. It's several different things that you're doing in a short time span. So I don't know how well that's going to hit, but it looks like a lot of fun.
it looks fun, and yeah, that's the main. When I look for indies, I generally like, hey, what's looks the most fun to me.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
I,
Okay,
I do
well,
love how each of us have, as we're going through our lists, the other two are like, I gotta add that to my list, like,
yeah, all three of yours were hits for me. Goodness gracious, I'm
yeah,
gonna have to come back to this episode to remember these.
yeah.
Same, same.
Yeah, goodness gracious. All right, well, I almost feel like mine doesn't
I think it's more
compare.
impressive that we actually came up with three separate indies, each of
Yeah,
us.
Well,
I
it was almost becoming a little overwhelming. I was going to text you guys in the Discord and be like, "Hey, are you guys having trouble? Because there's a lot of like I'd go to
there's
like different websites and see what indie games that they have, and rarely were there any duplicates. Like there were some, but everybody had something different that they put
Yep.
for their top indies. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that this is a lot to look through, guys. Are you okay? Because um,
don't get overwhelmed.
yeah, it's a lot. All right. Mine is my last one is a game called A Space for the Unbound. So all of mine are actually coming out pretty soon. So, but
Cool.
this one's a narrative adventure, and it has some heavy themes, and I appreciate games that are willing to risk dealing with some deeper stuff. There's some instances of child abuse within the first 30 minutes. There's a demo for
Wow.
this, and it's not physical abuse, it's verbal, but still it goes to show what kind of themes they're willing to tackle in this game. So you're these kids basically, and the setting is in India, which I found really cool because that's just not something that you see all the time. So, you know, you see the characters, they're dressed in such a way, very pixelated art, pixel style art, and it just it's narrative. So there's not much I could say without spoiling things,
Yeah.
but um, you can play the prologue on Steam, and it hooked me. I will say that it hooked me. I was in. I wanted to know more, and it's imaginative. It's real. It's harrowing. I like the feelings that I got from it, because sometimes it's like, man, like I felt, I wouldn't say sick to my stomach at times, but I felt anxious. I was like, oh my gosh, okay, like what's gonna
It
happen
pulled at
next?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and I appreciate it when people write stories in that way. This is where video games can go. And yeah, there's not much gameplay to it. I would always prefer my games to have lots of gameplay, but sometimes I'm okay with just reading and clicking text boxes and seeing what happens next and doing a few little mini puzzles here and there. I'm fine with that. I'm hooked. So you just can't experience games or TV and movies in the same way. So it's
And
interesting. It is an indie game, so I imagine this is not going to be a game where the story drags on. It looks like it'll hit you with the things that it needs to hit you with, and get out, be done, and sit with it.
and you said you played the demo and got hooked.
Yeah,
That I feel like a game can do its job pretty well if it gives you a demo and makes you hooked on the game, like you want to know more. I think that's a success to
That's
the.
supposed to be what the demos does.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that's a good job though. Is
I always
And you know it's
appreciate
gonna.
a developer that is willing to put out a demo because even if it doesn't turn out good, that demonstrates some sort of confidence that you might have in your game. But yeah,
Yeah,
the one thing I wish, and I can't tell because only in the demo, but I just wish the architectural stuff style of it felt more like I was in India. With all the other cultural stuff, you get the feeling like, oh yeah, this is what India. You see the bikes rolling by, you see the way people are dressed, things like that. The only thing I don't feel like is India is the architecture because it's so close up. I mean, you can see like it's just city trees, very kind of specific things, but not enough to get you the feeling like, oh, this is what India looks like. Obviously, in this uh, cartoon way, but so I hope I could get a little bit because I've never been there. I've only gotten instances of the sense of India. So everything else is like, yeah, like okay, like this is kind of what Indian people, dress like, act like. This is what they do. So I just want to see the full picture. I like that they went with that.
yeah, it looks good. I'm always down for. I do like a visual, novel almost
Yeah.
experience there.
All right. That is a space for the Unbound. So that'll do it for us. We have
Yeah.
talked about our indie games, lots of news, good stuff. David, you
Good
looking
stuff.
tired, so we're gonna get up on out of here. So appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. Subscribe, like, bell icon, all that stuff you've been doing on YouTube since God knows when. We've all been doing it for a long time. You know what to do with all of this. So y'all have a good night, day, afternoon. We will talk to you later.